Welcome back. If it's Tuesday, voters are voting somewhere. And today that somewhere is Massachusetts, where Republicans are choosing their nominee for governor in a state Democrats are looking to flip. Current Republican Governor Charlie Baker, who handily won in 2018, announced he would not run for re-election. Former President Trump has endorsed former state legislator Jeff Deal over businessman Chris Doty. The winner will face Democratic Attorney General Maura Healey in November. Our friends at the Cook Political Report rate the gubernatorial contest as solidly Democratic. And joining me now to discuss the rest of the midterm landscape is our great panel. Washington Post Congressional reporter Marianna Sotomayor, Democratic strategist Adrienne Elrod, and Republican strategist Diaz. Thanks to all of you for being here. I want to start with where I started the last segment, talking to our correspondent at the White House, Monica Alba, which is this messaging that we are seeing from President Biden, the hitting the former president, calling him out by name, and hitting MAGA Republicans. Adrienne, is this a winning strategy? Because even some Democrats have expressed concerns that it could cost them with independents and some other voters who find it to be divisive.
Yeah, I don't think so, Kristen. I mean, look, you can run a positive message on a campaign, but it's usually not going to get you anywhere. You've really got to draw that contrast. And President Biden has such a great record to run on. 4 major economic bills in the first 20 months of his presidency, the first black woman on the Supreme Court. We could go on and on about the list of accomplishments that he has that, frankly, most previous presidents would love to be in his position at this state of the midterms in terms of the number of accomplishments. So he's got to go out there and now not only make the case to the American people, but he's got to remind folks what life would be like with any kind of Republican control, and even if that means just in the House or just in the Senate. And so I think drawing that contrast and really going hard after Trump. I mean, he's got the bully pulpit, right? And the fact that we are talking about him, calling them MAGA Republicans and talking about how, the MAGA Republicans want to subvert democracy, we're talking about that because he's talking about that. There's no better messenger for this, and I think it's a smart tactic.
Danny, what is your take, particularly when former President Trump is referring to President Biden as the enemy of the state? He's attacking the Justice Department, the FBI in the wake of the search at Mar-a-Lago. Some Republicans have been critical of President Biden's rhetoric, but does it come off as being hypocritical given that former President Trump is using heated rhetoric as well?
My guess is that Joe Biden has historically low approval numbers. He's has a tough rating on the economy. Right track, wrong track is in the wrong direction. Historically, these are not great barometers for the party in power, and he doesn't want this to be a referendum on him.
Do you think, though, that to that point that Republicans should be more focused on the issues that you just laid out? Because right now it's becoming a choice election between Democrats and President Biden and Republicans and former President Trump, who's been ever present on the trail and in the headlines with this search of Mar-a-Lago.
I think Republicans have been pretty focused on inflation, economy, and jobs. And I think you're going to see a lot of that over the next 60-plus days. We're going to seek to make the election with swing voters, the persuadable voters, about those issues. The Democrats are going to try and seek to make it about social issues. And that's kind of where the battle is going to be fought here in the next 9 weeks.
Marianna, obviously this is the battle for control of Congress. What are Democrats and Republicans saying to you about the state of play right now and where the rhetoric stands and where the races stand?
Yeah, well, a lot of Democrats don't necessarily want to run on Trump. I don't think you'll see them talking about and mentioning Donald Trump's name on the campaign trail, just like Joe Biden.
They're not following the president's lead.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
But they want to run on Trumpism. Now, what does that mean? And I've talked to a number of Democratic strategists and Democratic House members in particular, because that's likely where they're going to lose the majority. And what they're telling me is that they're trying to talk about this through the framing of freedoms. The fact that, if you elect House Republicans, a number of your freedoms are going to be taken away. Of course, abortion is a big one, and we've seen a number of independent voters start to swing more to the Democrats' direction on that front. They're saying what is going to come next, and now pointing to the fact that they've been able to pass legislation to try and counter that economic argument. But they know that if gas prices start to go up, if inflation remains, which it seems like as of now it is, that's still going to be a really big problem for them to try and dent.
I'm glad you raised the issue of abortion. I mean, do you all still see that as the big X factor? Danny, you look at what happened in Kansas in the New York special election. Is that what makes Republicans most jittery right now? Because as Marianna points out, you do have a number of Democrats who are running on that issue.
Yeah, look, I think economy is still the top issue, but abortion is obviously rising. Additional registration among women, intensity factor for Democrats, all of which is true. But this is about candidates talking about what you're for and highlighting a contrast that was mentioned earlier. And we need to do that on this issue, on the campaign trail, as well as drive kind of the economic issue, which is usually the determining factor in midterm elections.
Adrienne?
Yeah, I mean, look, you just pointed out the evidence, the Kansas ballot initiative and the New York special election. The issue of Roe drove those elections. Of course, it was on the ballot in Kansas. I think the big question for Democrats is, can we keep up this momentum? Early vote starts in a lot of states in a couple of weeks. I think that's going to be a determinative factor. But look, the president's party in power is typically not going to have a good midterm election cycle. I don't know if we're going to hold on to the House. I don't know if we're going to hold on to the Senate. But I do think that the Roe issue is going to help mitigate some of the bleeding that we would typically have in this kind of election cycle.
Let's talk about a couple of the races that we've been mentioning, some of the hottest races. Dr. Oz, who's facing off against John Fetterman, and you saw him there today in that soundbite that we played at the top, really making the issue of John Fetterman having had a stroke, bring it to the forefront. Should he debate him? And of course, as Vaughn has said, they've reached out to the campaign, haven't gotten a response yet, Marianna. But at some point, the pressure is just going to continue to mount on John Fetterman to face off against Oz.
Absolutely. But here's the way that I think the Fetterman campaign is looking at it, and Democrats generally, is why are you going after someone who just had a stroke? Because it's something that a lot of people can relate to, right? Whether it's a family member, whether it's friends. Some of them are able to fully bounce back. Others, of course, are not able to. And you have to still help that family member. So what the talk is among Democrats is, why are you going after this? If it's something that every American more or less can relate to, why are you going after him on that?
Danny, are Republicans comfortable with that kind of rhetoric, do you think? Is that a smart strategy? Dr. Oz has had a number of fumbles in the past. Is this one that you're concerned about?
I think if you were to ask the Oz camp, they'd say they've taken quite a bit of incoming, and all is fair kind of in politics. Ultimately, voters synthesize all of this and make a decision. I expect you'll hear more of this, not less, over the upcoming weeks.
Adrienne, what do you make of I'm from Pennsylvania, so I know these debates are something that voters in Pennsylvania tune into.
Yep.
How do you think that this issue is going to play?
Yeah, I think it's going to play very well with independent voters in the sense that they think it's a turnoff that Dr. Oz, a doctor who made a bunch of money by dispensing medical advice on television, would actually make fun of a guy who had a stroke.
But do you think at some point they are going to want to hear from John Fetterman in the context of a debate?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, look, in any close Senate race, any close race period, you've got to have these debates. I think it's very important. I hope that John Fetterman will do this. I think it's an important thing. And I think he's going to dominate the debate. So he's just got to get out there and do it.
I don't know that showing that you're prepared to govern is an unfair qualification for a very high office. He's going to need to do that and convince people that he's capable of doing it.
Let's talk about the fact that Mandela Barnes did not appear with President Biden when he was in Wisconsin. Now, his campaign, we should stress, says that it is because he had previously scheduled events. But Adrienne, do the optics of that become complicated for the president?
I don't think so. President Biden has made it very clear constantly on the campaign trail. If it helps me to campaign with you, great. If it helps me to not campaign with you, fine. Democrats, we've got to do whatever we can to win. There's so much at stake. I think President Biden believes that, too.
Marianna, this is going to be a very delicate dance. There are going to be a number of Democrats who might not want to appear with President Biden right now in the climate.
And it totally has been the question, I think, for months. Do we show up with him? Do we not? Some of the most vulnerable House Democrats have said, sure, come by, but maybe don't put your arm around me. Like, I don't want the pictures and ads, right? But I don't think it'll necessarily hurt Biden, right? I'm sure he is aware of the political dance, as you put it, that a lot of these Democrats have to do.
Okay. And we had the same conversation, by the way, about President Obama in 2010, too. ACA had just been passed. It was not very popular. Obviously, the rest is history. But a lot of Democrats didn't want to campaign with him.
Final point, Danny.
Whether the campaign associates itself with the president or not, there could be hundreds of millions of dollars of ads showing the president alongside these candidates in the future weeks.
Okay.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.